This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Look, setting the pace with Alex and Facci. If I put our jacks in the paint, how you gonna stop me? We can go head to head. Call out your top three. Look at the switch from Duarte. Now that boy got three. We got Halliburton running point. This is the Benedict for the shot. If anybody gon' come in the post, then we got Jalen Smith for the block. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your number one podcast. Sweeping every team, we gon' need a mop. Smooth.
What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden. Joining me, the one and only Michael J. Facci. My goodness, Facci, what a busy trade deadline after we thought nothing was going to happen, really.
There was talks of this being one of the quieter trade deadlines in recent years. Woo! Alex, a lot happened, and you know me, I go to bed a little bit on the earlier side compared to maybe you. I woke up and it was on from Kevin Durant getting traded to the Suns, and it never quite stopped until 3 p.m. today. This was a fun trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, to be honest with you. I had fallen asleep about 11-ish last night after the Pacers played the Heat. I had to wake up for some reason at like 1 o'clock. My body just woke up right around 1 o'clock. I look at my phone's going off, so I just, it's this time of year, so you just look, and I see breaking, Kevin Durant traded to the Phoenix Suns, and I said, oh my God, I got to stay up now and see what's going on. So Twitter was ablaze, everybody was going back and forth, and obviously this just opened up another window of opportunity for so many things, and the first thing I thought of was, okay, Jae Crowder's involved in this trade with the Suns, obviously. He's going to Brooklyn. Does this mean Milwaukee is going to have a chance to find a deal here? Because for some reason, Milwaukee and Phoenix could never agree on a deal. And then, lo and behold, Facci, our Indiana Pacers step in as a third team to help facilitate this trade, something that we had been talking about for a while. The Pacers could be a team to do that. And it's a bit of an interesting trade. I don't think anybody loves it, but it's still a pretty cool trade to get this guy back right here.
Yes, it is. Now, look, I was saying for quite some time, there's no shame in third wheeling. All right, and the Pacers end up being the third wheel in this deal, just like they did in years past involving the Victor Oladipo, Houston Rockets and Brooklyn Nets deal. In this situation, 3 second-round picks were traded to the Pacers, along with Jordan Nwora, George Hill, and Serge Ibaka. Alex, did you think Serge Ibaka was ever going to put a Pacer jersey on?
No, to be honest with you, he was kind of a name that was thrown in there at the last second because at first it was reported that we were getting Jordan Nwora and we're going to get some second-round picks. And then it was reported by Woj that we were getting George Hill in the trade. And then Shams comes back and says Serge Ibaka is going to Indiana too. And I'm thinking, we got 3 guys coming in here and nobody going out for the Pacers. So how is this going to all play out? And that's where it got interesting because we found out from Shams pretty quickly they're going to waive Goga Bitadze. And then it was Jake Fisher close to like 2:30, I think it was.
Yeah.
He said that a small detail here, but Terry Taylor will be waived in the Pacers-Bucks trade. So now, Facci, there's only one thing left, and that means the Pacers, in order for them to acquire all 3 players in this trade, they have to have 3 roster spots. Well, they have a full roster because they guaranteed that contract of James Johnson, and I believe it was Terry Taylor's contract that became fully guaranteed. So by waiving Goga and Terry Taylor, they can take on the Nwora and George Hill, but they still have to find a move to make for Serge Ibaka to come over in this deal. So it's obviously going to take a little bit of time because I don't even think the Suns and the Nets have officially done, or the Suns and the Nets have officially done their trade yet. So it could actually turn into a 4-team trade. Wouldn't surprise me if that's how big this gets, Foch. But we do know that Serge Ibaka is not going to stay with Indiana. Shams just reported before we got on here that they will waive him. So they're going to have to waive somebody, though, to be able to take him on. And right now, a lot of people have asked who it's going to be. The name that makes the most sense is James Johnson. But here's what I'll tell you. If he clears waivers, they can re-sign him back. So that wouldn't surprise me. They waive James Johnson for this transaction to go through. Then they bring him back on to fill that final 15th man on the spot, on the roster.
Yeah. I could see that. There was so much mystery involved with this trade that, First was like Jordan Nwora, cool. Hey, young player, a 6'8" wing, a good 3-point shooter in this league, only 24 years old, under contract next year at just $3 million. I was catching Aaron Nesmith vibes of like, we got a young player who, hey, fits that, small forward build that we're looking for. All right, great. He needs more playing time. Then it was like, okay, well, what else is going on? And when Jake Fisher said one small detail, well, you know what? It wasn't a small detail. This is Terry Taylor we're talking about. I love me some TT. And this one hurt, but I understand. And if you love something, sometimes you got to let it go in order for it to be free. And if it returns back to you, you know it was meant to be. And that's what happened with Lance Stevenson. That's what happened with George Hill. And maybe one day we'll see Terry Taylor again. I don't know, but I really do hope that he lands on a team, which I really feel that he will, but a team that gives him the playing time that he's looking for. Now, to your point with James Johnson, I think James Johnson has been such a good veteran for this Pacers team that I really feel that I would love for the fact that if he is waived and could come back, that'd be awesome. If not, I do think that the Pacers are at this point now where you got 30-something games left in the season. You do still have veterans on this team like TJ McConnell. Hey, if George Hill is sticking around, which it sounds like he's definitely a veteran, 36 years old, born and raised Indiana. He's got the state of Indiana tattooed on him. He's from the glory days of the back-to-back conference championships. That's a good vet to have. But like you said, still remains to be seen how this finishes up.
I mean, they could always cut O'Shea Brissett, but I think that would be more of a mistake than anything.
It would be a mistake. I agree.
Speaking of Jordan Nwora, obviously we don't watch a lot of Milwaukee Bucks games except when they play the Pacers, and so we might catch him on national TV every once in a while. But Nwora has not really been part of the rotation, right? Yeah. He's a guy that's gotten a few opportunities here and there, but he's really not played that much. And when he has played, though, Facci, this season, 39% from three. So that's something that you do like. I did reach out to our friend Ty Windish, who hosts the Euro Step podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network, which is the network that we're with. And a lot of you guys probably know Ty's voice from the ad that is played on our show constantly about, betting and stuff like that. So Ty knows the Bucks, though, in and out. And this is what he said. He said, it's complicated. Nwora's best skill is the ability to hit pull-up contested jumpers, including threes, but he's not actually all that efficient and doesn't have a great handle. Some Bucks fans say his defense is terrible, but personally, I think he improved and is passable on that end, if not a defensive stopper. He strikes me as a pretty typical bucket getter kind of player who seems to be better the more shots he gets in a given game. I hope he gets run so we can see if he puts it all together or remains inconsistent. So that's
a good description.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, people that watch the team on a regular basis are going to have a much better idea of that. So I'm not going to try to sit here and lie to you, Facci, and tell you I know a lot about Jordan Nwora. I don't know anything about Jordan Nwora. So this is the best way for me to try to let our fans know kind of what to expect from him. So seems like he could be a bit of a chucker, but he's 6'8", Facci, and I think that's what's really enticing about him.
It's a lot to like. And like I mentioned, he is under contract next year at just $3 million. So a good low risk gamble. And when I mentioned that, it gives me Aaron Nesmith vibes, Jordan Nwora has actually had some good games in his career. As a rookie, scored 34 points while also scoring 21 and 24. Then the following year, scored in double figures 21 times. This season, scored double figures 8 times. You got to remember also, this is a Bucks team that's looking to contend. Now, we're not going to say that Nwora has real postseason experience. He has logged a minute in an NBA Finals. I looked at it. It was very much like a minute, 2 minutes there. But he's part of a winning culture. And I think that that's always important to get as many winners together as you can, because then it becomes contagious. And I think that he's, I don't want to say he's proven, but he's been a good three-point shooter in his career. 38% for his career. We know that's kind of what he's bringing to the table. Pacers like to shoot threes. I think this is a good opportunity on a buy low guy that you didn't give really anything up of significance for. You also got back 3 second-round picks, and even George Hill, 36 years old, set to expire at the end of this year. It's not like the Pacers took on or limited their cap space moving forward significantly at all.
Yeah, I'm curious how many second round picks we got, because I thought we only got 2, and I thought the Nets got 3. So
no, so ESPN already, it was the Pacers got 3.
Okay.
So it was 2 in the first original deal, and then they got an additional 1 for taking on Serge Ibaka.
Okay, I wonder if the Nets got 3 as well.
It was 5 for second round picks. Nets got 2. We got 3. That's how I read it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like really, it's not been any clear reporting on this trade whatsoever. It's been jumbled pieces all over. So if we got 3 second round picks out of this, that's really important, because just looking at how many players were acquired today because of the amount of second round picks they had, like, no, they usually don't mean a whole lot to teams, but when you say, hey, we can throw you these 5 assets to go trade or whatever, because we saw in 2 different reports today, the Warriors got 5 second round picks basically for Sadiq Bey in terms of that 3-team deal that was originally reported between the Hawks, the Pistons, and the Warriors. And then they used those same 5 picks that they got in that to go get Gary Payton II, someone that they lost in free agency. So I just thought it was pretty interesting, and they gave up James Wiseman in that deal as well. So, it's just kind of funny how second round picks work. But I think, obviously moving on from Serge Ibaka, $1.8 million expiring contract, nothing really going to hurt you there. George Hill in the final year of his contract, $4 million a year. I think this is a guy, though, George Hill, being on this Pacers team. Refresh my memory, Facci, but wasn't it not too long ago when he was a free agent that he wanted to come back to Indiana?
He did.
He's wanted to come back home for a little while now. Obviously, he's not on a championship contender like he was in Milwaukee, but still a chance to come back home, maybe finish out his career here. I think he liked Indiana, obviously, and this is a really fun team. So having him on here as a veteran presence, I think that's awesome. I just don't anticipate him playing any minutes, but I think he's a great insurance. If you have another point guard injury, you could play him as a 3rd-string point guard, something like that. But really do believe in George Hill and in terms of his veteran presence.
Exactly. Do not know how much George is going to play at all. I really don't. But the fact that he's coming home, I think that he can deal with that rather than demanding to be bought out and try and chase a ring or anything of that sort. So nice to have him back. I always, had fond memories of George Hill. So that's a pretty cool reunion. But for Goga Bitadze, I mean, were you surprised the Pacers couldn't actually find a suitor? I wasn't either. And we talked about it. Look, we knew that we might have to attach a pick just to, unload Goga. But in the end, hey, I hope he lands on his feet somewhere. Very curious to see what happens with Goga for the rest of season, or does he go back to Europe? I definitely think that he is an NBA player. I definitely do, but I just don't know where he's going to be able to get that playing time. And unfortunately, it never worked out here, and it never looked like it was going to work out here.
Maybe once he clears waivers, the team will pick him up and give him a chance. I could see maybe San Antonio, because we did talk about, them losing Jakob Poeltl. They traded for Dwayne Dedmon, and they actually waived him, bought him out. So they do have a hole there, I believe, at the center position. They did get Kim Birch in the Poeltl trade, so, there is that there. But you just have to wonder, maybe they're a team that could be interested in doing something like that. And then Terry Taylor, this one hurts because we really like Terry Taylor. He came on our show, and it just seemed like the front office all offseason just was raving about him and how he can be this connector. In fact, to start the year out, somebody pointed out to me today, like when Miles went down, in the warmups in the first game of the season against the Wizards, they went to Terry Taylor as a starting power forward and had Jalen Smith slide to the 5, and that just didn't work out. And so, Terry Taylor, I just feel like he didn't really get a good opportunity to showcase what he has. And some people said, yes, he did. He showed it in practice. I'm like, not really. Okay, like, come on now. The Pacers have prioritized who they're going to play. And I think, honestly, I'm not surprised that they cut him to make a deal like this happen, because he was a non-guaranteed contract. So it was not getting any playing time, and it was slim pickings out there. So makes a lot of sense. But I think the one that is probably the most interesting is that Daniel Theis is still on this roster.
I just don't think they were able to find a home for Theis. Only played a couple of games. Now you look at the Clippers. I believe they did acquire Mason Plumlee.
They did.
I want to say, and Plumlee's having a really solid year. Like for Mason Plumlee standards, we're not talking like this guy's knocking on the door for an all-star bid or anything, but Plumlee, I think, is a player that they got a larger sample size on that is expiring. So now you're not taking on any additional money. I just don't know where else there was for Theis to go this year. But next season, when it looks like his money is closer to expiring, because after next season, there's still one more year that's non-guaranteed, I think it'll be easier to move Daniel Tice.
Yeah, maybe they can trade him in the offseason. It's not something that they're like losing sleep over that they didn't trade him. Now, the question is, will he continue to play the backup 5 minutes moving forward for the Pacers over guys like Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson? So that to me is like the $1 million question, Fachi, because we don't want to get into it too much because, it is what it is. I put my stuff out there on Twitter if you want to find it, but Benedict Mathurin played 13 minutes last night against the Miami Heat. The Pacers lost a pretty competitive game, and they played their veterans heavy minutes in that one. A lot of Buddy Hield, a lot of Miles, a lot of Tice, a lot of McConnell. Obviously, those are your 4 vets on this team that are getting significant playing time. And, Duarte had a pretty good game as well. But, Mathurin, just 13 minutes, 2 points, 2 shots. And, when asked about it after the game by Dustin DePierick from the Star, Carlisle said, coach's decision.
I know. I didn't like that answer. I think he said coach decision. There was other guys that I went with it. Or something.
Other guys that had it going.
Exactly. Yeah. And,
Okay.
and that was just like, man, that reminds me of last year when like there was those situations where it felt like a tank job at times. And like, I don't want to say we're going down that avenue now, but like the starters played heavy minutes. I mean, Nembhard played 28 minutes. The rest played at least 30 to 37 minutes. It's just Benedict Mathurin is way, way too good to only log 13 minutes, even if it was a blowout and this was a close game. I just feel like something switched. I don't know what switched over the last few games ever since Tyrese Haliburton returned. Like you can, that's where you point the finger at, is like right here, something happened, something changed in terms of like what his minutes were going to be. And I just don't like it because we're seeing the body language on Mathurin, but we feel like there's obviously a lot more that we might not be aware about, but like his start to February is just, it's not representative of what he brings to the table.
I mean, I put a stat out last night of his last 5 games before Haliburton played, and he had over 20 points per game. I mean, it was 23 to 24 points a game is what he was averaging.
It was exactly 23 and a half.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was right there, Foch. He was putting up some big numbers. And then all of a sudden, yeah, he played 27 and 28 against the Kings and against the Cavs, but he played 20 against the Lakers and 13 against the Heat. And it's just like, for whatever reason, it feels like they've taken away some of his reign, I guess you could say, some of his freedom. And they're trying to control some of the stuff that he's doing. Like last night, he was very lackadaisical on defense. I mean, everybody gets mad whenever we talk about that because nobody wants to badmouth Benedict Mathurin, but there are times where he ball watches and doesn't pay attention. Like there was one, his defender just went right by him, got an offensive rebound, put the ball up. I mean, he gets caught ball watching, and part of me feels like Carlisle is just being hard on him because he demands excellence out of him, and he wants him to earn it and not just feel like he's given that freedom to do whatever he wants. And maybe there was a little bit of like, we gave him a little bit too much freedom when Haliburton was out, and we don't want him to get comfortable with that. Now, I personally think that's a silly narrative, but I can kind of see from a coach's perspective why you're trying to rein that in and teach this young man some self-discipline and how to follow along with a game plan. But I'm sure the 13 minutes last night probably ticked him off. So I'm hoping that Friday against the Suns, he's able to, duplicate what he did when he was in Phoenix the last time, when he had like 28 points, I think. So this is, or 26, but there's just something going on though, Fachi, that doesn't seem right. I'm glad they asked about his minutes last night, but I'd be kind of curious why they think his role has changed so much. I would love Carlisle's answer on that, even if he's not going to be transparent. Love why Mathurin's role seems to have changed so much since Haliburton's come back.
It just really does feel like Carlisle's trying to teach a lesson here, and it's almost just like, oh, like why pick on Mathurin? He's been so good, and it just feels like there's been other players that this lesson hasn't been taught to, but it definitely feels like it's Mathurin's time to be, going through, getting, just making sure that nothing's handed to him, I guess. When in reality, not to say that we wish things would be handed to him, but like his development is one of the most important things for the Pacers this year. And I know it's just one game seeing him play less than 20 minutes, but I had a problem with him playing just 20 minutes against the Lakers, and now we're talking about less. So I don't like the direction that this is trending. And then other than that, in that game, Alex, I'm going to be honest. We spoke a little bit off air. When I saw that Jalen Smith was removed for a non-COVID illness, I thought, oh, man, this guy might have played his last game as a Pacer. Obviously, that is not the case. It's good to see that's not the case. But, I mean, do you feel we got any more clarity for the rest of the year of cleaning up the rotation when all we did was trade or get rid of two guys that weren't even in the rotation?
Yeah, nothing really seems clear at this point. It's as clear as mud with Rick Carlisle as the head coach. It's like, looking at the standings, Facci, they've fallen to 12th in the Eastern Conference. They are the 6th worst team in the NBA, and they are 2.5 games ahead of the Orlando Magic, who are 13th, and they're 2.5 back of the Atlanta Hawks, who are in the 8th spot. So they could go either way, and I think you got to look big picture here. We talked about it with Bob, and I even brought up the whole point of making the play-in but still getting the top 10 pick. I think you got to scratch that now. Bigger picture, get as close to the top as you can. It's a fun scenario to talk about, Facci, in terms of like, yeah, we could still make the play-in and get a top 10 pick, but it's like, that's fool's gold. Don't be stupid with this. You know, in my personal opinion, Facci, why are we playing veterans over developing young guys? I understand, like, last night, whatever, it's one game, okay? But if this is a continual trend past the All-Star break, then I'll be really upset with how they're approaching it as a fan, because as a fan, you want to see the young guys develop. And I know that they got to earn their minutes, and you got to reward the veterans because you got to keep the veterans motivated as well that are on the roster. But at the same time, I think they get the big picture here. What was the whole entire thing we talked about coming into the season? Development, development, development. Hard to develop your guys when they're sitting on the bench watching your veterans who've already been doing it for the past 5 to 7 years.
It really is, and I'm sitting here. I gotta wipe the clown makeup off because I'm like, man, I really just don't think we're that bad of a team. But we have the 6th worst record in the NBA. I mean, by the numbers, it's not good. And I understand that Halliburton injury really just sent the Pacers in a completely different direction. But at this point, when you're talking that the Pacers are approaching a borderline top 5 pick, I'm sorry, but it feels like the decision's been made up for us. Mm-hmm. And let's take a look at this perspective. Trade deadline, we expected the Toronto Raptors to be sellers. No, they weren't. They were actually buyers. Jakob Poeltl is now on the team. That is a team that's in the 10th spot. So they didn't unload Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet. They're going for it. They're trying to keep this core together. I imagine they'll be better. Chicago Bulls, they had every opportunity to be sellers.
Every opportunity.
They probably should have because they owe the Magic their first-round pick. I believe it's top 8 protected. They're saying, nope, you know what? We're going for it. I've read they could have some interest in a Russell Westbrook. So it's like those are two teams that I think are going to keep moving forward. I mean, Atlanta Hawks, they get Sadiq Bey. All right, the Knicks, you get Josh Hart. It feels like the teams above us got better. Now you start to look at the teams below us. Charlotte sold off some guys. I mean, Detroit made a very interesting move for James Wiseman. But the Wizards literally did nothing. I guess they're buying out Will Barton right now. So they're I don't know what they're doing.
Only you would know that.
Yeah, only I. Yeah. Me and Woj. But anyway, so it's just like for the Pacers, it's like we weren't buyers. We just made these tiny, tiny little moves. We weren't sellers. It's just like, all right, we're riding this out. I don't know if that's good or bad, but even for a team like Brooklyn, at least like they, you know, when they made moves, they still set themselves up for the future, but also, you know, it might not be this. They're remaining somewhat competitive this year. I just wish the Pacers would have picked a direction. And I don't know exactly what that would have meant to sell when we're talking about, like, I guess like a Buddy Hield or Duarte. Like I like both of them. I don't want to trade just to trade, but man, we're stuck in this spot of like, where are we going? Yeah,
we were facilitators. We weren't buyers or sellers. We helped facilitate the trade market, and that's okay. I mean, it's good to be opportunistic and take those kind of moments when you can. But I think we knew from Bob all along they were going to be staying pat for the most part. Yeah. Nobody expected any big, changes here, and I think maybe had they been playing as well as they had in December all the way through January, then maybe you see them make a move to kind of like go in and be a little bit more of a buyer. John Collins was a name that was out there a lot, And it looked like the Hawks were trying to find a deal for him up to the deadline, and then they ended up not finding anything. And so they're a team that pretty much didn't make any moves besides selling off like Justin Holiday and Frank Kaminsky. And, they ended up getting Sadiq Bey. So they made some decent moves to kind of, make their team a little bit better. It wasn't like a massive upgrade, but, all these buyout candidates as well could be something to keep an eye on, because it feels like there's a lot of teams that could be really, willing to give up some guys. But for me, Foch, I think when I look at this Pacers team, this screams to me, let's ride out the rest of the season. We're not a great team. We're not really a good team either. We're an okay team that had some success early on. Let's see what the rest of the year looks like. I don't think they're going to intentionally tank, but
Neither do I.
I think they're going to be competitive. I just think they're going to let it ride out how it goes, because they still are in the play-in tournament type of thing. So that's how they're going to do it. And I think they're going to make their big moves in the offseason. I think that's kind of been the case since they realized that they were going to re-sign Miles. And once they extended him, it did kind of limit their options and what they could do with flexibility and money. And that has kind of pushed things back just a little bit in terms of what they want to do. And now they have some time to figure out what direction they want to head in the offseason. I think they're still in rebuild mode, and we've got some decent talent, but we just don't have enough to really call this team anything more than a fringe play-in team. So that's why you got to get better draft capital, Foch, and you have to continue to figure out ways to make this roster better.
A fringe playoff team feels like the new modern
play-in, not even play-off.
Well, that's what I meant. A fringe play-in team feels like the new tough out saying right over there, because it's
like, a nice way of saying it.
How a fringe, that might have been the nightmare scenario coming into this year. It's like, we'll be a fringe playing team.
Yeah.
But is there a move out there that you saw happen that you went, man, why didn't we do that?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just like, for what? Like, what was the purpose of any of these moves that were made today? A lot of these moves, besides the Kevin Durant ones and stuff like that, were just like teams trying to get a little better on the fringes, right? You look at what the Clippers did. Now, they did a pretty good job. They got Eric Gordon, Mason Plumlee, and Bones Highland. I thought that was pretty spectacular in terms of trying to bolster up their bench rotation, and they really didn't give out too much. They gave out John Wall, Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, those kind of pieces. So, those were ones where I was like, okay, and I think they got Bones Highland for 2 second-round picks.
That is what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
That's a move that I told you at one point. I was like, man, you know what? Like, that Celtics first-round pick definitely gets the deal done. I felt like you're talking about 2 second-round picks for Bones Highland. Like, man, we just brought on George Hill. Like, it's just like, you're going to bring in another guard. I mean, Bones would have been someone with some high upside, a real good shooter. He's young. We got a boatload of second-round picks. That was a deal that I felt like, man, that would have been a cool deal for the Pacers. The next one I'm going to say, it doesn't make sense because the Pacers extended Miles Turner. But when you told me that James Wiseman went for 5 second-round picks, that's a real good buy low candidate. I could tell by the facial expression you have on right now, you have no interest in James Wiseman.
Why? We have so many centers.
But I'm saying if the Pacers weren't going to extend Miles Turner, like say that wasn't going to materialize,
okay.
That's the type of move that I pounce on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Sadiq Bey would have been an interesting guy to go after as well. I love that Jalen McDaniels is going to the Sixers. I think he's going to really help them.
Not much either, though. He didn't. I think it was
I think it was 2 second-round picks. Matisse Thybulle goes to the Blazers. They got Svi Mikhailuk in that trade, which they acquired him from the Knicks in the Josh Hart trade. So, I thought there was a lot of interesting moves out there. The one that I actually kind of liked that probably gets overlooked is that 3-way deal that happened between the Lakers, the Timberwolves, and the Jazz.
That was a big deal. That was a cool deal.
I think that the Lakers did a really good job in this, getting Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and D'Angelo Russell for a protected 1 through 4 2027 first-round pick that conveys into a second if it doesn't, become a first-round pick. So to me, Foch, that was one where I was like, okay, I like what the Lakers did here. I'm kind of confused by what the Jazz were thinking with just taking on Westbrook's contract, giving up 2 of those guys and getting such a heavily protected first. It's kind of a fake first, but I think they can use that 2020.
Top 4 protected.
Yeah, 1 through 4.
Yeah. I mean,
The Lakers, how often are the Lakers at the top of the draft? Not very often, because they're always getting the next free agent and that kind of thing. So
I mean, they could get the 10th overall pick, 15th, you know.
But what I'm saying is it's top 4 protected, which means that if it lands in the top 4, the Lakers get it right. So it's not like it's going to be a great pick. And if it falls all the way to the top 4 and the Lakers are bad, right? I always think about that wrong in my head.
I know. I'm like, that's really not heavily protected at all. It's actually minimally protected.
It's minimally protected, but it's not like that big of a deal, because even if they are terrible and they end up in the top 4 for whatever reason, they get it back and it turns into a second immediately. I just don't think the Jazz even keep that pick. I think that's when they're going to package with all the other picks they have to make some splashier moves. But other than that, I mean, I actually like Mike Conley going to Minnesota.
I think Conley is going to be really good for Minnesota. They need like that veteran leader, and I just feel like D'Angelo Russell, while he's a talented guard, like Mike Conley between the ears has Russell beat 10 out of 10 times. Like, that is a veteran point guard, like one of the better point guards in the league that has not had, you know, championship success of any sort, but a really good addition. The Lakers, I would just say before we wrap up, they were definitely one of the major winners. We knew it was going to happen. It always feels like a LeBron James team is somehow going to, at the deadline, you know, kind of win the deadline. Other than that, you know, we talked about it a little bit, but like Phoenix making a huge splash, getting Kevin Durant. Now all of a sudden,
and TJ Warren.
TJ Warren going back to Phoenix. That was cool. That was, you know, it was like respect for TJ. I'm sure he's happy to go back to Phoenix where he's had success. New ownership over there. So it's going to be pretty cool for Phoenix. But like the Nets, like the East got weaker. The West got stronger. For the Pacers, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for the Pacers in terms of how they can go about rebuilding, because before you know it, somebody in the Western Conference is going to want to leave the West and come to the East. Could the Pacers be players and go out and get them? Keep an eye on that. That's something I'm just going to say as a little tease here, Fachi. But like you said, we got to go. So let the people know where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at Setting the Pace 3. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at Pacers Talk. You can find us on Facebook, Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Man, Fachi, all that rundown, it's almost like it's just become like, you know, monotonous when we say it. It's just like it's so like in your brain and so ingrained.
Rhythm.
It's rhythmic. So yeah, anyway, youtube.com/In the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can find some of our YouTube or some of our podcasts on their video version. We do not put all of them out there, but we've been trying to do a little bit more here. So this one will probably be on there as well. As you can see, my George Hill picture in the background here from my green screen. But with that being said, Fachi, if you're excited that George Hill is back to get backpacks out and be the hometown hero, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!
Setting the pace, going to the top. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your #1 podcast. Sweeping every team. We gon' need a mop. Smooth.